Welcome everybody to what should be the final content section of this course. And I'm talking about content here because it's the final section in which we're not going to be doing a build. To be a little bit more clear, in this section we're going to be tackling audio. I would like to thank everybody who left rating for the course because this idea for adding the audio actually came through a rating description. So it's because of that rating we're making it, and I do want to thanks everybody who left rating because yeah, they're quite useful for me at least. That being said, we are going to be not recycling some code that we made in the past, but we're going to be recreating some code that was made on the YouTube channel prior. And in fact, if you want to skip the whole first episode, you could actually go and grab the code on the website itself. So if you want to do that, it's under the website epitome.cc. You go under the download section, and here we have the audio manager. You will need to be signed up for this and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll see all the links are on there. So that being said, I've downloaded the package. It's a Unity package, and I'm going to be running it inside of here. It's not completely cleaned up right now. It's going to be by the time you see this, but what we need here is the audio manager. If you do decide to download, all you'll have to do is double click on the audio manager and make sure you import it to your folder. Now, if you're not going to the easy route, we are going to recreate that code, and it's going to be quite fast. So let's make sure we create a new folder under our script folder. I'll call it the audio manager. And in here, I'll create another file, C# file, also called audio manager. And we'll be reusing the same technique we did for static instance. And that technique is the same one we use, for example, in the save manager here. It's kind of a half singleton, and I'm saying half because it does not compose all the section that you would want in a singleton, but most of it is here. Well, at least the static instance is here. So for our game, I'd like to allow music to be played in the background as a loop music, but also I'd like to be able to crossfade in between two different music. For example, when we're in the menu scene, I'd like to play a certain music in loop, and when we enter the game, same thing, I'd like to play a certain music in loop. For the crossfading to be made in between those two, and for it to sound good, we will need to have both tunes playing at the same time. In order to achieve that, we could be using two different audio sources for the two different tracks. So I'll start by declaring a couple of fields here at the top. A audio source for music 1, and also another one for music 2. And since we're in the audio source, I'd also like to declare another one for the sound effects, which are going to be played on a whole different one. So the sound effect source. On top of that, I'd like to have a configurable field here for the music volume. So private float music volume. Oops. Could be equal to 1 at the moment, and we can lower that if needed. And one more field, which is going to be a Boolean first music source active. So you're going to understand that this one is for logic. So I'm just going to move that down and actually move this one up because it is a configurable field. Now in a awake statement, I'm going to configure both of these music sources and also make sure I create them. So in a private void awake, I will be doing the following. I'll start by a don't destroy on load this.gameObject to make sure that this audio source persists in between scenes. Even though we're not switching scene in our case, we have a one scene application, which is quite cool, but just in case something happened and we have to change. Next up, music 1 is going to be equal to GameObject add component, so we'll be adding it manually. Type of audio source. Can't seem to type today. Same thing for music 2, and of course same thing for the sound effects source. So when we put the script on top of a empty game object, it's going to create its own audio source. It's going to make sure we're not able to destroy it when we change scene. And then finally, with the music sources, I'm going to make sure to put them on loop. So loop is equal to true. Same thing for music 2. Now it's time to start playing the sounds. To do that, we're going to be using the audio source component, so the one we have right here, and call the play action on it. The easiest one is the sound effect, and it's also the one we're going to be doing first. We're going to be creating a new public function. This one will be able to call it from outside, called play sound effects, with the audio clip you'd like to play. Now the easiest way to call this one is like so. We call the sound effect source, and we do play. Actually, we're going to be doing play one shot, like so. And do note that this one also takes in a volume scale if you'd like to lower or increment the sound here. So the reason I'm using play one shot instead of play, play would mean that before I actually call the play function, I will need to assign the clip manually to the sound effect source and then call play. And that's cool. It's something we could have done. We have a reference to the clip. However, when we try to play using just the play function itself, we cannot overlap sounds if they need to be overlapped. For example, if we want to play two sound effects at the same time, the sound effect is going to be called with the normal play. And then on the second sound effect, when this one starts, it's going to completely shut down the first one and you won't hear the end of that sound. Now with play one shot, it doesn't do that. So it just launches the clip, that audio clip, and it doesn't stop it. So it doesn't stop it whatsoever. And this is why we're going to be using this one in case we overlap sound at one point, which in our case would be a desired behavior. So with that being said, I'm quickly going to create an overload in case I need it here for volume. Just like so. And now we have the play sound effects, which are a public function in which we can access from anywhere now. Okay, now moving on to the part that's a little bit more hard, and that's the play music. Actually play music with some fading in between them. Again, we're going to be creating a public void, and I'm going to call this one play music with X fade, with crossfade basically. We're going to take in the music clip as the audio clip, and also the transition time, which I'm going to default to 1 in case we don't specify it. The first piece of code I'm going to be creating in here is the following. We're going to be determining which one is the active audio source, and it's going to be important in case we're switching from one to another in the middle of our scene. So I'm going to be recreating these audio source, called the active source, and we're going to be looking at, is my first music source active? If that's true, then I'm going to give the following. So music 1, and if not, it's going to be music 2. Now the same thing is true for this one, so new source. If this one is true, we're going to be saying music 2, and then music 1. We're just swapping them around. And now these one have the reference of music 1 or 2, depending on which one is the active one and also which one is the new one. Then it's going to be time for us to swap that boolean over here. So if previously the first music source was active, now it is no longer true. And we do that by saying equal not, the same thing. And now it's going to be time for us to set the new source. So new source dot clip is going to be equal to the music clip we receive in parameter. And then new source dot play. And with that, we are going to start playing that music. However, now we have to create the crossfade in between the two and make sure we call a stop at the end. This is going to be done with a coroutine actually, and the coroutine is going to be declared just down here with a private enumerator. If you haven't already, make sure you add the system.collection. You'll need that to call the enumerator. And I'll call this one update music with X fade. In parameter, we're going to have the audio source, the original one. We're going to have the new one, so audio source, new source. Audio clip, the new music, and float transition time. Just like so. Now that we have this function, I'm going to go back to the previous one and make sure I create the coroutine quit. So now that we have this function ready, the signature ready, I'm going to make sure to call it with a start coroutine. And then what do we need to send? We need to send the coroutine itself. So that would be update music with crossfade. And this one takes in the original source. In this case, that's the active source. The new one is the new source. The audio clip is a music clip. And transition time is, of course, transition time, like so. Now, a couple of fields here repeat themselves. That's from my previous implementation. Technically, in this implementation, we would not need to include this. But the reason they were there in the first place is because in the other implementation, we have normal crossfade, we have normal fade, and we also have crossfade. And we also just have play music on its own. So there was a different way to actually call this. But technically in this one, we won't need it. I'll leave it in there just in case. But you'll see that inside of the first few lines that you'll find under the update music with crossfade, those are just really things to make sure we're configured properly. So here, make sure the source is active and playing. So if we're not playing, we are now playing. If the new source wasn't stopped prior and wasn't on the new clip, then we make sure to do that, stop, change the clip, and play again. This is what we see here. It's repeated code. So if you'd like not to see this, you can remove this part here at the top. But you want to keep the stop because every time we crossfade back, you'll want to stop your, even though the sound is going to be at 0, you'll still want to stop that so it doesn't cost you some performances. And now we begin with the actual crossfade by declaring ourselves a float, t for time. And now we're going to be doing a for loop. So for t is equal to 0.0f, as long as t is smaller or equal to the transition time, then we add this by the delta time. So t plus equal time dot delta time. And now with this, we can yield return to make sure our coroutine stops here until we're actually done with this for loop. And we can say, hey, the original volume can be equal to the music volume. This is the one we have by default, minus t divided by transition time times music volume. We can go over this very, very quickly. Oh, oops, here this is not a, it's equal. So imagine that this music volume is always 1 by default, because this is the maximum sound that you can have on the audio source. So you can say here, for example, if we are 3 seconds in and the transition time is 5, so you're going to see 3 divided by 5, we're at 0.6. So we're at 0.6, and then you can do 1 minus 0.6, which gives you 0.1, because you are making sure that we start here at 1, and then we go down. So this number goes down over time. And now we're going to do the same exact thing, but the other way around with the new source. Let me make sure I replace here with the music volume here. It's very important because, for example, if your default music sound music volume is not 1, but is, for example, 0.7, you want to make sure that you go back at 0.7 when you're done. So here we do the exact same operation, but the other way around. So t divided by transition time times music volume. And for the priority of operation, I'm just going to make sure to wrap these up in parentheses. Okay. So with this, the original volume goes down and the new source volume goes up. And to make sure that we don't end up on a funky frame, which means we don't end up at a weird value. For example, the new source volume could be 0.97 instead of 1. We're going to make sure that once everything is completed, we set the new source volume to music volume, which right now is equal to 1, and also the old one, the original. We're going to make sure it's completely shut down by putting that on 0. And once we're done, we can finally stop the original soundtrack. Alright, that's a lot of code for a single video. I know I was quite fast on this, but it's code that we've seen in the past. That's code that I've made a video about 1 year ago, I believe. And it's code that works very well. So if you're interested in learning more about this, I do have a full-fledged video right here on my YouTube channel. You can find it. Audio manager playing a sound, and that's my stupid face again. Okay, awesome. I'll leave you here. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next episode in which we are going to start tackling this in our game. So we're going to be integrating the sounds in our game. Cheers. In this section, we're going to be using the audio manager made during the previous episode and implementing sound in our game. One thing we have to make sure when we're working with sound, and it's something that gets me out all the time, you have to make sure that you're not under mute audio in your game view. So my game view over here, the mute audio button is not pressed on. So with that out of the way we've made our thing is really simple. Our audio manager takes in public function. You just call them with the audio clip you want and everything should work. So our first goal will be to play the menu loop music, which is the music we're going to hear when we're inside of the menu. And now the best way to actually get to that place, the best entry point for that place would be under the, I believe, the game state menu. So let's open up our folder, look for game state, and under the game state initialize, that's what we called it. Okay, so here, I'll be opening this one up. I'll need a new serialize field, which is going to be audio clip called menu loop music. And when we construct this one, I'm going to be calling the audio manager instance and the play music with crossfade. Send in the menu loop music with a transition time of say 0.5 seconds, so it's going to be quite fast. And that should be all we need for the music to be played. Of course, now we have to first create our audio manager in the scene. So this, we only have to do it once. So right, create a new empty game object, audio manager, add the audio manager script to it. So here it is. And then under the game manager itself, we're going to find the game state initialize, and our music is right here. Now I made sure to import a couple of music that I found on a free website. Unfortunately, I cannot share them with you because it's not something you're allowed to redistribute. However, you will not have any problem finding royalty-free music to use for your game if you just do a quick Google search. But do note that it would be better to create, of course, your own assets. In my case here, I found these 4 clips on Epidemic Sound, which is you could say it's a service that I subscribe to for YouTube, but also works with game. And I have 2 tracks, a menu loop and also a game loop, and then 2 sound effects, just for show purpose. We could add a lot more sound effects. Actually, your game would be much better if you added a sound effects for pretty much everything. It's a good way to do feedback. However, in my case, I don't have enough of these right now. So, and I also don't know how to make sounds pretty well. So what I'm doing here is just showing you how to do it. And of course, if you want to make that better on your end, you can do so. Now back on my game state initialize. So over here, I'm going to be adding my menu loop music, and we're going to give this a try. And I've got a problem right here where it said we did not find a reference to this object. So most likely our audio manager was not found. Let's double click on it, see what's wrong. And yeah, so because this was done in a awake statement, the audio manager is never actually set. So here on my audio manager, I did forget to do something here, and that something would be the instance is equal to this. So it's going to be very important to do that. In my other implementation that I have on my website, I had the better singleton that would do it on its own. However, here I did not do it, so that's why we got a null reference. And now when I hit on play, we should be able to hear some music. Yep, I don't know if it's loud, so I'm going to stop it here, but we should be able to hear that music. And what we're going to do now is try out the crossfade with the game music. So the same principle applies. We're going to go under the game state game. Here I'll be adding a new serialized clip, audio clip. That's going to be the game loop music. And in the start, I will be calling the audio manager instance play with crossfade game loop music, and again 0.5. Now let's try going back and forth in between these musics. But to do so, we'll have to assign the reference first. So under game state game, drag and drop my game loop music, and then let's play. Then I'm gonna go back to the menu, And here you go. So we got music that crossfade in between each other. Now the next step I'm going to do is add 2 more sound effects. Those work in a different manner simply because they are not being looped all the time. So they're just being played when we call it. For example, I have the onCollect fish that I'd like to modify to actually play a sound when I do collect the fish. So what I did is I found my fish.cs, and under my pickup fish, I am going to do the exact same thing. So I'll go here, do a serialize, or actually, you know what? I'll do it under the game stat. So I don't have to have a reference to everything all the time. Over here, public audio clip, fish collect sound, or SFX. And when we collect a fish, so on collect fish, let's play a sound using the audio manager, play sound effects, and we're going to play that sound effects we just had. Now we have to find the game stats.cs in our game and make sure that this is that the sound is assigned. So game stats. The game stats.cs is on top of the game manager, so over here, and I'll drag and drop the collect sound. Now what we'll do is we'll play this and try to run into a fish. And there you go. It's as simple as that. If we'd like to lower that sound, we can do so by just adding a different parameter here. So under the play sound effects, we can say 0.7 for example. Now we'll do one more, and that last one is going to be about the def mechanic. So I'll do that on the player. So under the player motor, we should have the uncontroller collider hit. So under the uncontroller collider hit, we could be doing that in the dev state as well, but I'll do it here because the action is done when we hit something. We are going to be calling the audio manager instance play sound effects with, of course, the sound that I don't currently have. So I'll go back, declare myself a sound roughly around here, maybe here. Hit sound, like so, and we will play the hit sound when we actually hit the wall. Again, I'm going to lower the sound just a little bit because it seemed like the last one was a little bit too much in regard to the music. And now with that in mind, I'm going to go on my penguin, find my player motor, we have the hit sound right here, and I'll be drag and dropping the def hit. Let's give this a try by running into the wall. Okay, it's a weird sound, but the purpose is here. I mean, we're doing the right thing here. I'm going to cancel this music, and that's pretty much all we needed to implement sounds. Now, I would suggest that you actually spend a lot more time than I did to find these sounds, or even better, make these sounds, and add as many sounds as you wish on button clicks, when you collect stuff, when you jump, when you land. There is so many things you could add on top of what we currently have to make your game sound a lot better actually, and feel a lot better when you play it. But do note that most of the game being played on the Android or phone are actually not being played with sound, so that's a bit discouraging note, but it's the reality here. So that being said, it's gonna wrap up this section. Very simple section. It's a very simple logic as well, and I hope you guys enjoyed. In the next section, we're going to be looking at building for iOS, and that's going to be the final section before we tackle the optional videos. Thank you so much for watching, and